Hi everybody and welcome back to my channel. I am Vanissia from The Woolly Worker and today is episode 2 of the Woolly Worker Knitting Podcast. So first of all, I'd like to thank everyone who has subscribed or liked the previous videos or left nice comments. It's been really encouraging so far, so I am really excited to film the second episode today. If you're a returning viewer, then thank you very much for coming back. I hope that you like this episode. And if you're a new viewer, then hello, welcome. This is a knitting podcast and it's going to follow the relatively similar structure as other people, where I'm going to talk about what I'm wearing, my finished objects, my works in progress, and then my acquisitions, if there are any, and there are some in this episode. And it's always difficult finding the right balance between giving too many details or not enough, but what I'll always make sure to do is to provide all the relevant yarns, colorways, measurements and everything in my Ravelry page. I always keep that very up to date and thorough. So if you want all of the information, then you can follow me or check my Ravelry page at The Woolly Worker. And then you can also check my Instagram at The Woolly Worker if you'd like to see some more photos and updates or stories. I try and stay active on both of them. So with that out of the way, I'll just do a quick introduction. So my name is Vanissia and I am 24 years old. I live in Scotland with my partner. We've just moved recently within the country for new jobs, so lots of changes in life happening. I'm originally from Belgium, but I moved to Scotland 7 years ago to study, and I've really loved it and decided to stay here, which has been great. And I've been knitting for, I'd say around 4 years or 5, but I have really been taking it more seriously in the last year or so, and the improvements have been great. I've learned so many new skills and knowledge and theory behind things, and I've been really enjoying this hobby this year. So that's why I set up this podcast, is to just talk about knitting, because I love it. So maybe grab yourself a drink. I've got my trusty orange juice, and grab yourself some knitting. I'd love to see what you're working on. So if you're knitting along this podcast, please leave a comment and say what you're currently working on, and then hopefully you make some progress over the course of the video. Today is a bit weird weather-wise. It's quite sunny, but also cloudy. So the clouds are coming in and out and the lighting might change, but hopefully it's not too distracting. But yeah, so today is going to be hopefully not too long a video, although let me know if an hour is a good thing to aim for, or whether you wouldn't mind a podcast that's maybe an hour and 10 minutes, an hour 15, because I feel like I have to kind of rein it in while I'm filming to try and not speak for an hour and a half. But let me know if you'd enjoy that. But I have gotten so much done since the last podcast, and I have 7 finished objects and then only 1 work in progress. So I've been really, really productive and it's been great. Most of them are accessories, but then there's also a couple of sweaters in there. So yeah, let's get into it. So the first thing first is, what am I wearing? And if you watched the first episode of the podcast, then you may recognize this, and this is the Daily Pullover by Paula Pereira from Pearl Soho. And this is made in a yarn from Wee County Yarn, and it's the Kinross 4-ply. And it's a fingering weight yarn, and as you can see, this is really nice. This sweater, I made the size 37.5 inches, and my chest is 34 inches. So there's about 3 inches of positive ease, but I feel like it's quite a fitted jumper, and the sleeves are really nice and fitted as well. And the best thing about this jumper is the yarn. So this yarn, it's lamb's wool 100%, and it's, I think, not scoured is what the name is, and it really softens when blocking. So I was very much influenced by Rebecca from the Crea Bea, and I bought this yarn at my local yarn shop, The Inspired Fibers. I'll leave the link below. And they had this beautiful color called granite. So I bought 5 skeins of yarn, and I used 4.5. And I swatched it, and I was so excited to put my swatch in the water to see what would happen and how it would feel. And I wasn't lied to. It was amazing. It felt like cashmere, so soft, so beautiful, so even as well. The stitches are very, very nice. And I cast it on. So I cast it on as soon as we moved in this place in December. And I was working on it religiously, like hours a day. But then I kind of lost motivation because at some point when I finished the yoke, I decided to pick up the neck and get the neck done. And I really struggled. If you can see it in my previous podcast, I showed some photos or videos of the neck and it didn't sit flat at all. But as you can see with blocking, this is perfect. There's no flaring up like at all. Is that flaring? Yeah, it's not flaring out. And it's laying like right on my chest. It's perfect. The back had some weirdness as well, and I can feel it right now. It's a bit bunched up, but I'm wearing it, so like no one can see. So blocking solved everything, but I didn't know that at the time, and I lost motivation because the neck didn't turn out the way I wanted it. And this is a fingering weight sweater, so it takes a while. And what I struggled as well with this yarn was the Italian bind off, because I feel like the yarn wasn't as stretchy and bouncy as other yarns may be when you're doing the Italian bind off, like with a strand of fingering and mohair, it's kind of smooth and everything. But with that yarn, it felt so rigid. It felt like the piece of yarn was like, you know, string that has no give. So I found it so hard to control my tension. You know, the Italian bind off, you can make it very tight or very loose or normal. And I found it so hard to know what normal was. And it really made me lose my confidence in the Italian bind off because it used to be one of my favorite bind off and I never found it difficult particularly. But ever since struggling with the bind off in this sweater, now when I'm making other pieces, I'm really double second guessing everything. But anyway, I made the Italian bind off on the sleeves and it's okay. As you can see, it's nice and round. And again, it's not flaring out, which is an issue that I was worried would happen. And it did look a bit weird before block, but then this is fine. And you know, like the sleeves are nice and not tight. They're perfect. And I made them a little bit longer than what the pattern calls for, just because I wanted to be able to do this and feel super cozy and just, you know, wrap myself up in this soft hug. But then for the body, for the hem, I didn't do the Italian bind off. I just bound off in pattern, and at some point I'll show, if I haven't already, some photos and videos on the side in B-roll to see the details. But I just bound off in pattern loosely, and again I was worried it was going to be too loose, but then with blocking everything was very straight and rectangular. The other modification that I did for this pattern was I used a twisted rib for every rib, and I wasn't happy with that at all at first. I regretted it and I wished that I had gone for normal rib, but now that it's finished, I actually love it. I think it looks so elegant, those like little straight lines. But I would be curious to see what it would look like with a normal rib. I don't know if I would redo this pattern. There were a few problems with it. The author actually, the designer actually emailed on the day that I finished this with an update for the pattern because there was a mistake in the V-neck centered decreases, but this is something that I had read about in the pattern notes, so it was okay for me. But I know some people don't read the Ravelry, so they would have been cut out, which is a shame. But it's good that they've released an update. And then the other thing I was going to say, oh yeah, there's short rows at the top of the back and then at the bottom. And I did the short rows at the top, but I regretted it afterwards. And so on the advice of other Ravelers, I skipped the short rows at the bottom. And it's completely fine. And also the other modification that I did is that I made it much longer. So I'm more precise in the Ravelry page, but I think I added 3 inches in length. And then I did the ribbing, and then I did the ribbing a ½ inch longer than what they called for. So in overall, I added 3.5 inches in length. And I'm really happy with that. It's nice and comfy. It's not too cropped. And if I want to, I can tuck the front in high-waisted pants, trousers, or skirts. Whereas the opposite would have been a bit annoying. And if I were to redo it again, I think I would make it maybe a ½ inch shorter. But that's just being nitpicky. I'm so pleased with this. I had lost motivation in the previous podcast, but I'm so glad I finished it. It feels amazing. I've tried it on for the first time after blocking this morning to film this, and I'm so happy to be wearing it. It's so comfy, so warm, and I love this yarn so much. And I've already made a little list last night of all the next fingering weight jumpers I'm going to make and what color I'm going to make them in, and they're all from the same yarn, because the yarn has an amazing range of colors to choose from. So if you're interested, I could make a video on fingering weight jumpers to do. and it would just be my list. And then you can follow along and maybe make one for yourself. They're quite nice and varied. There's a few drop shoulders, a few raglan, some crew neck, high necks, puffy sleeves, fitted sleeves, short sleeves. So it's going to be such an exciting experience. I think because I finished this in about 3.5 weeks, having stopped in the middle. This didn't take too long at all, and I think I was put off of fingering weight sweaters, but there's no reason to be, and actually it was a great experience, and I honestly cannot wait to buy more fingering weight yarn in different colorways and to make this list that I've made. I'm so excited, and yeah, this is great. Okay, so now let's move on to finished objects. So I'll start with the 2 finished objects that were work in progress in the previous video. So the first one is the pair of socks. These are called the library socks. Yeah, so I'll put the name of the pattern designer as well. This was a free pattern, and I had finished one sock, so I finished the other one, and they're really nice and, oh, sorry about the light. I'll just show a photo on the side, but yeah, they're nice and symmetrical and even. I already said all there was to say in the previous podcast. So this is made using West Yorkshire Spinners signature 4-ply in the colorways Butterscotch for yellow and Blue Tit for the self-striping yarn. I remember having a bit of a problem making the second sock where maybe my tension was different, and even though I started at the exact same place at this grey stripe, by the time I reached, I think the heel was okay, but by the time I was reaching midway, I realized that I wouldn't get this green stripe at the top. I was going to get one more or one less, and that stressed me out a little bit. But then I think it was okay in the end. I think I ended up removing one row of the yellow toe and then adding a couple of rounds of the foot, and that way the stripe matched up, because I thought my feet wouldn't notice if the sock was 2 rows longer, but my eyes would notice if a colored stripe was missing. And then the other issue I encountered was when making the second sock, after making the gusset decreases, I ended up with an uneven amount of stitches, and I didn't understand what had happened. And again, it was starting to stress me out, and I was getting frustrated and annoyed. But then I realized, you know what? Just decrease an extra one on the other side, or skip a decrease on this side, and it'll even out. And again, like, you may know this now, and it may be annoying now, but you'll forget all about it. And then if you wear them, you'll also forget all about it, and it's not noticeable. And I was right, it's not noticeable. They're perfect, they're great. The only thing I would say is they're a bit on the larger side, and those were made on 2.25? Yeah, they were made on 2.25 millimeter, which is already on the smaller side. But I think what I'll do next time is just use the West Yorkshire spinner and make it on 2mm needles. And I'm worried that this was going to make the cuff not wearable, but maybe I'll make the cuff on 2.25 and then the sock on 2 and see how that is. It'll just be an experiment. One of my goals this year is to perfect my vanilla sock recipe and find the right amount of stitches, the right needles, the right amount of rows on the foot. Like, I just want to find the perfect sock. And then I can use all those very fancy skeins of hand-dyed yarn that always catch my eye when I'm out and about. So hopefully I'll do that soon. But right now I'm a bit over socks. That was a bit of a struggle to get the second one done, but it's done. And then the other thing that I had mentioned in the podcast as a work in progress was the vest number 2, summer edition by My Favorite Things Knitwear. That was my first My Favorite Things Knitwear pattern, and I really liked it. She's got a really nice style of writing the patterns, very understandable, not too much fluff, a little bit. I'd say it's a little bit more helpful than the PetiteKnit patterns, like she goes into a tiny bit more details. And I've made this in Isager, I'm sorry for butchering that, Alpaca 2, which is 50% wool, 50% alpaca, fingering weight, and then Isager Silk Mohair in the colorway Navy. It's the color 100, because I had that left over from the Sycamore sweater. So this is it. Yeah, that's perfect. Look at that, it's great. So I've made the size small. Yeah, I've made the size small on 4.5 millimeters. And I was worried it was going to be way too huge, but actually when I'm wearing it, it's fine. I think I could have gotten away with just making the extra small. I'm between sizes, by the way. I'm usually between extra small and small. And then they always say, it's a matter of preference. Do you want something more fitted or more loose? But the truth is, I don't know. So usually I just kind of alternate between something extra small and something small. And I'm gonna hopefully, by wearing them, realize whether I prefer more fitted or oversized. Wearing this is quite fitted. I like it. So maybe I'm gonna be less daunted by going for the extra small patterns, instead of just always going for oversized. But this is a lovely pattern, so I didn't make any modifications, I don't think. And if I did, they would be in my Ravelry project page. I kind of forgot now because it's been a while since I finished. I've not worn it yet. I guess the only issue with that is I've been struggling to know what to wear this with. I know people wear that with like long sleeve tops, but I don't have that many of those. And then t-shirts, but what colors would go great with that? I've got like a white t-shirt, but I'm worried that this is gonna shed a lot. It's extremely drapey. It just feels like the most delicate, soft thing in the world. And it was really fast to make. I like that the neck, it's got the same kind of center decrease as this has. I went with normal rib. Yeah, I think it's perfect. And I did the Italian bind off on all the edges. And again, I've talked more about that in the previous podcast, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this now because we have a lot to get through. So I think that's all for all the objects that were in the previous podcast. Then something that I've mentioned in the video that was in the podcast is the Cargill cowl by Rebecca from the Crea Bea. This is a gift for my mother, so Mom, if you're watching this, please look away and pretend to act surprised when you see this in a couple of weeks. So this is a Cargill cowl. It's really nice. It's so square. I've blocked this. And it's made with the classic dip stitch that Rebecca made in her first pattern, the Cargill sweater. I'll put some videos and everything because we're getting quite a lot of sun in this area. But this is made with leftovers from my Stockholm slipover, which I have shown in the previous video podcast. As you can see, I'm trying to be quite thrifty and use leftovers and scraps. So yeah, I guess there's nothing really to say about this. It's a really simple, easy pattern, really quick. I made that really fast. At first it's a bit tedious and you have to get used to the dip stitch pattern, but after that you get in a rhythm. I think it was Laura Penrose from Penrose Knits who says it's kind of like brioche, where at first you're like, what is this? And it's not like normal knitting, but then you get into the groove of it and then it's really rhythmic. And yeah, because the pattern is made over 4 rounds, the little dip stitch, then it's really easy to set yourself a goal, like, oh, I'll just make 2 more little hearts today, or I'll do it until I'm halfway there. And I was doing some wool, like math yarn, to try and really maximize my usage of my scraps, and I'm really proud of this because I managed to use literally all the mohair I had left. And I ran out of mohair while I was doing the Italian bind off for the end, so I just used my fingering weight strand of Sunday by PetiteKnit. This is from Sandnes yarn, the yarns, Sunday and Tin Silk mohair. And so I ran out of mohair, so I've used literally all the mohair I had, and then I've got a tiny bit of fingering weight left. And I'm really proud of this, and I'll hopefully show some photos of me wearing it. I've not really worn it or taken it out too much because I want to keep it really nice for the gift, but I will try it on and show that because I think it really will be showcased a bit better because this just looks like a big square. But yeah, so nothing else. I'd recommend the pattern. I'd recommend the Cargill sweater pattern, which is on my list. And I hope that my mum likes it, and I hope that she likes mohair. I'm not too sure. If she doesn't like it or can't tolerate it, I will steal it from her for sure. And I probably would remake this pattern with just a normal DK weight yarn. That's no problem at all. So next on the list is a headband. And this is the School Run headband by Laura Penrose from Penrose Knits. And she released a full collection of this headband, the School Run hat, and then the School Run mittens, which are on my list. And this was made with double Sunday from Sandnes yarn in the color cardamom, and that's the color I used to make my champagne cardigan, which I'll talk about in a future video. And it was made with just over 1 skein of double Sunday, so if you made it like a couple rows shorter, you could probably get away with just using 1 ball of double Sunday, which is amazing because that would be such a cheap, quick gift knit, and also a good way to use scraps, because in my case for the champagne cardigan I had 1.5 extra balls, so I used that extra ball for this. So I'm really proud of having used my scraps. It's really nice. It's got like a nice picot edge is the flagship kind of way of doing this. and it's got the classic twist, and Laura really walks you through. I think those were the clearest explanations I've ever seen on how to make that twist. It was perfect. There's a little bit of seaming involved in this project, but don't let that put you off because the seams are all hidden, so even if you don't do the best job, it's fine. So I'm not going to put it on because I've got a headband, but I'll show some photos or videos of me wearing it if I haven't already. And yeah, this actually came about because I was meeting a friend for coffee the other day, and it was just a 10-minute walk away from my house, but on my way there and on my way back, it was really windy, and I just kept on saying, I need a headband, I'm going to make myself a headband. And I was saying that for ages. Every time I'm out and it's windy, I say to myself, I'm a knitter. I can make myself a headband in like a day if I want to. Why am I suffering? And then my friend motivated me to make that headband, and she suggested Filcolana Peruvian Highland wool, which I only had marzipan in stock, but I think that was a sweater quantity. So then that one I only had one ball in stock, and I thought, okay, perfect. I'm not saving that for anything else. But then yeah, if you have an extra of Filcolana Peruvian Highland wool, then make that headband. It's perfect. It's great. I think it would be nice to make one in navy or olive, but you can also go for very fun like colors like red. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else to say about this. It was just a really quick and easy project. And again, there was just enough steps, and they were quite close together, that you just wanted to reach the next step, and that's why I worked on this non-stop. I think I started it on like the 30th of December, and I gave myself the goal of finishing it by the new year. So I think I finished it, like, I finished half of it by that night, and then I like blocked it, and then it dried overnight, and then I blocked it, and then I finished it on the 31st. So I managed that goal of making this in 2 days, which was great. So the next thing is another accessory, and apparently I'm just making myself really warm this winter. So I've made the fingerless mitts in fisherman rib, and this is from the book Knitting from the North by Hilary Grant, which is an amazing book. And actually, in my previous video, I've talked about everything I've made since I started knitting, and I made these in petrol, the colorway petrol, when I first got this book, and I loved them. They were in the same wool, which is Jamieson and Smith, or just Jamieson's of Shetland Spindrift, which is a fingering weight or 2-ply wool, Shetland wool. It's really great. They've got the most amazing color selection I've ever seen in my entire life. It's absolutely insane. If you ever go to a shop and they have it, you can just gaze at all the hundreds of colors. And I loved my petrol colorway. I love those mitts. I was taking them with me everywhere. They were so worn, but they were like very sturdy, and they were really warm. They're kind of like water resistant as well. When you try and block these, like the water just like repels. And I felted them accidentally one day, which was heartbreaking. And I never got around to making another pair, but I decided this year was the year. So I, again, took some scraps that I had. I had, I think, one ball of this is 25 grams, and I think I had 70% left, or 75% left of that, according to Ravelry. So, again, I did some very tricky math, yardage math, and I started them both at the same time on different needles. And I was working my way up a little bit, because I wanted them to be the same size. And then trying to figure out how much yarn was one row taking, if I have enough for the bind off, so that I would use, again, as much yarn as possible, so as to not have 5 grams left, because that's like unusable, but also not running out. So I'll stop teasing and I'll show them. So these are the mittens. They're looking very simple. So that's the fisherman rib, as you can see. So it starts off with some stockinette, and then it kind of rolls. And then normally you're supposed to end it with stockinette, but I've just done an Italian bind off because I didn't have enough yarn. And that's the same on both. So I'll put them on because they're really nice. And I've worn them out, and they're really nice. I need to stop saying they're really nice. I blocked them, and I didn't block the petrol ones I had done. And I noticed that after blocking, they did relax a bit, so they're not as snug. So I think if I made them next time, I'd maybe even do less stitches. I already did less than what they had recommended, just to make sure that they're extra snug. So yeah, they're perfect. You can make them as long or as short as you want, basically. I'm quite happy with how tall they are here. It's like right where my fingers kind of start, but you could make it longer. And then you can make them a bit longer on the wrist as well if you desired. You can make the thumb opening as long as you want. They're flat and then you seam them together. So it's really easy. And again, that took me like 2 days. And I feel so chic when I'm walking out. I've got this beige coat that I wear outside. And it's like the little one pop of color that peeks out of the sleeve. And it just brings fun in life, because gray and everything and beige, we love, but color is nice in small doses. I've almost lost these twice. I keep on misplacing them because I always put them in like my bag or my pocket or something else, and I would be devastated if I lost them. But it made me want to make more. I've got a lot of leftovers of Shetland Spindrift. And basically, if you do a little bit of math, and if you don't mind them being on the shorter side, or tighter side, then you can get away with using less than one skein. I think the pattern originally called for 2 balls of petrol, and you absolutely don't need 2. 1 will be more than enough, and you can get away with even less than 1. And actually, it's been making me want to mod this to make them in the round, so that's something that I might work on at some point. With my other skeins of Shetland Spindrift, to try and make more of those fisherman mitts in different colors in the round. I'm thinking some other blues, just to replace the petrol ones that I've lost. And then talking about blue, this is another accessory that I finished, and that was also using scraps. And it's using scraps from my forest land sweater, which I've shown in my last video with everything I've knit since I started knitting. And it's Malabrigo Rios in the colorway Matisse Blue. And this is a bit controversial now, but the pattern I used, well, I'll show you the hat first. I don't know if you recognize this, but it's got like that point at the top. It's got the like decreases at the crown. I'll try and show this like in photos and videos. The color is pretty accurate here on camera. It's that blue. It's not blown out. This is exactly how bright the hat looks. And this is it, like without the rolled brim, so just a big long tube. And again, I was maximizing the yarn. I think, yeah, I have 9 grams of the yarn left. So I used a lot. I think you can do this with less than one skein of Malabrigo. And Malabrigo costs like 12-13 pounds. So if you wanted to make a hat like that for a gift, that could be a good way to just buy 1 ball of yarn. And there's lots of colorways that are really nice. Some of them are more flashy than others. Some of them are quite neutral. I'm definitely going to reuse this pattern and make more of those maybe for Christmas. But it's 2x2 rib, so it did get a bit tedious. And you start off at the bottom and you work your way up. Then you have to make those decreases, which is like the fun part. So when I was working my way up, it was really boring. But then I reached this, did the decreases, and I used double pointed needles. I've got this set, which is made of like carbons or something. I have no idea, but I'll put it on screen what it is. And I hated that. I'm much more of a Magic Loop fan, for sure. And I've really not like at all used DPNs. And these are made of a material that's very kind of sticky, it feels. There's no slide at all. And I think some people would like that for DPNs because it's always the risk is stitches falling out. But I personally found that extremely annoying and it interrupted my flow. It just felt so unnatural. And my tension suffered as a result, and my decreases aren't as neat as I would like them to be. But it's okay. Also, Malabrigo is a superwash wool, so when I blocked this, it definitely became longer and wider and more relaxed and more floppy. And I think maybe I would have preferred this hat to have a bit more structure. So obviously I just did that because I had the scraps in the yarn stash. But if I were to make that again for a gift or for myself, I would probably want a sturdier yarn. And so the pattern that I initially wanted to do was the hipster hat by PetiteKnit. It's a really popular pattern. Lots of people have made this with double Sunday scraps, which I have some of as well, or Malabrigo. And yes, an extremely popular pattern. But then I was thinking, and I don't know, this is maybe going to be controversial, so I really hope I'm not offending anyone, but it's a really simple pattern. It really literally is just cast on a certain amount of stitches, work for a certain amount of inches, and then do this decrease. And the decrease kind of has those 2 columns of knit stitches stay the same way all the way up, and then the decreases are kind of happening in and around those 2 columns, and there's 4 of those, and it's symmetrical, and you can see it in the photos. And this is not something that PetiteKnit has particularly like invented. There's lots of tutorials for how to make that decrease on YouTube or other patterns, and I thought I kind of wanted to figure it out myself on how to make it, because when you look at the project pages, everyone anyway always mods the length or the cast on, because of like, they know that their head is going to be bigger, so they cast on a little bit more, or they know that they prefer a snugger fit, so they make the hat shorter. So technically all of that is up to you, and the decreases you know how to do, so that hat would be like fine enough to make up as you go. But then in the end I even found a free pattern, which is called the 2x2. I think I'll put it there on the screen, and it's a free pattern, and it walks you through how to make that hat. And to be honest, I followed that pattern to the T, the 2x2, and that's what gave me this. And I don't know, I call it my hipster hat because I like the name better, but it was a free pattern. I don't know, can you let me know in the comments what you think of this issue about patterns that are technically so simple that an advanced or experienced knitter can recreate themselves? Should they do it? So I was really whizzing through that, and I've got my 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 finished items out of the way, and it's only been 30 minutes, so that's really good. Oh, I forgot to mention, that's how much I had left of the mittens, the red mittens. So I'm so proud of really using up as much yarn as I possibly could without running out. Efficiency is the word. Okay, so now we go to my only work in progress, and technically I could be finished today, but I thought if I finish it this morning, then I will have 8 finished objects and 0 work in progress. Like, that would just kind of, it would throw me off. Oh, I'm really, yeah, the weather has changed. Okay, I think this lighting is a bit better. So the next item is the sweater number 23 by My Favorite Things Knitwear. And it's relatively new. There's not that many projects on Ravelry. There's a few projects on Instagram, and I absolutely love this sweater. I went for the size extra small, and in retrospect I regret it a little bit, and I wish I could have gone for small for that bit of an oversized look that I like in the model and in the photos on Instagram. Mine is definitely going to be more fitted, but that's okay. That is a look, it's a certain style, and then if I were to do this again, which I definitely want to do because it's a great pattern, I'd use a different yarn just for like variation, not because there's anything wrong with this. I'd use a different yarn and I'd make the size small, and I think that would be a great way to make a sweater look quite different, even though it's the same pattern, just by playing around with positive ease. And this is made with Double Sunday by Stainless Garn, and it's the color, ooh, the name is in German, Nachtblau, and it's 6580. And I'm playing Yarn Chicken right now. I'm trying to be so efficient. So I'll show you the jumper, if I can, here, because it's almost done. And I'll show some videos and photos anyway. So here it is. It's a drop shoulder design with a double folded neck and wide rib. So yeah, that's it. This is showing up a bit brighter than it is, but this is a beautiful, beautiful color that's kind of green, kind of gray, kind of blue. Like, it's a dark blue that almost has zero blue to it, and it's like a cold gray. The color is super squishy. It's got those very nice like neck detailing creases, and then something that's great about this sweater is the back detail. This is where the sleeves are joined. So I'll show some photos and videos because it'll be hard to demonstrate here, It's kind of heavy, to be honest, but I hope I don't feel that too much when I'm wearing it. So as you can see, I've just got like basically half of this rib complete. So I got to do maybe 10, 12 more rows of rib. I'm just doing normal rib. This is on 5mm needles. The original sweater uses, I think, a worsted weight and a mohair. Yeah, for like an iron. I think it's an iron weight at the end that they want. But some people have only used one strand, and I took inspiration from that. I didn't want to use mohair for too many of my sweaters. Firstly, for financial reasons. I cannot afford to make all my sweaters mohair sweaters. And then secondly, because I've already talked about that in previous videos for my skin, like tolerance to mohair. There are some mohairs that I'm starting to tolerate more. For example, Isiger and Tilia, I've discovered, is okay from Filcolana. And what was the other one? No, I can't remember. I think Isiger basically is like my go-to mohair that I know I can tolerate. And I want to try some alternatives to mohair. So for example, brushed alpaca, or like a strand of very thin alpaca, things like that. But sometimes I just want to experience the yarn on its own, like this. You know, it's great to just have that one quality, as opposed to picking two different yarns and having to worry, how are they both going to feel together? Is one of them going to kind of, you know, blind the other one? Or like, does it even matter having an expensive fingering weight if you have a cheap mohair, and vice versa? Like, are they going to cancel each other out? Will one good quality make up for a bad other quality? You know, so all those questions are things I don't really want to play around and find out. Yeah, I've made it in just that double Sunday then, but then that means that my gauge was like, I think it was fine, but I think it was going to be on the tighter side, which is why I wish I had gone for the small size instead of extra small. And if I were to do it again, the mohair probably would give it a bit more of an airy, drapey look, whereas this feels quite stiff. But I have tried it on, and even though at first, when I didn't have the arms yet, it felt like the yoke, like, you know, when I joined in the round, that felt very high. But once the sleeves were in, it was fine. It dropped, I guess, it dropped shoulder. So I didn't feel like I had something riding up my armpit too much. So it was fine. And I'm excited to finish it. I'm excited to wear it. I think it's going to be so wearable, like around the house where I just need something on, and also out and about. Especially sometimes people complain when they have oversized jumpers, they can't put coats on because of the sleeves. The sleeves are really nice and kind of oversized, which is great because usually my sweaters have decreases and everything. Like this one, for example, had a lot of decreases and it's really tapered. Whereas the one I was wearing in another video, the step-by-step sweater by Florence, that one had big airy sleeves like that with only like 1 or 2 sets of decreases, which I really liked actually wearing, and I liked the feel of that. So I'm looking forward to seeing how this yarn behaves and acts when it's blocked. I think that's all then for works in progress and finished objects. And we still have a lot of time left, which is great because I've got a couple of work in progress that are going to happen soon, and by that I mean that I've swatched. So I've made 2 swatches and I'll show them to you and talk about them. So the first one is this swatch. It's a beautiful brown, and this is made with Knitting for Olive heavy merino and Knitting for Olive soft silk mohair in the colorways Dusty Mousse for the merino and Dark Mousse for the mohair. This is made on 5.5mm needles, and it's really big, and it kind of hurt my hands to use those needles, but this is going to be for a slipover, the Weekend Sleepover V-neck by PetiteKnit, so hopefully it will be a very fast, short and sweet knit that will not hurt my hands too long, and it'll be nice to have a bit of variation from like all the 4mm needles. So everyone has been raving about those yarns and those qualities, and the mohair especially. The mohair is definitely like, it's got less of a fuzzy halo than other yarns, which I think I prefer. It's really subtle, and it's a bit darker than the yarn I'm holding underneath, which gives that kind of marled effect. This is the mohair and then this is the merino, as you can see. So that's quite nice. So I didn't want to splurge too much and buy a sweater quantity, so I bought a slipover quantity from knit.co.uk. She has an amazing selection of very nice yarns like Filcolana, Stentness Garn. She now has Knitting for Olive, which is amazing. So I've started the project page on Ravelry, so you can follow along if you're curious, but I've got the pattern, I've swatched, I got gauge, so I'm going to be casting it on today, I think, once I finish the sweater number 23, because normally what I always do is having something already ready, like on the go, before I finish the sweater, so that when I finish the sweater, I can just pick it back up. But this time I don't know why, I just ran out of all of my projects, and now I'm going to run out of this project. I don't have anything on the needles, which is stressing me out. I much prefer having something, lots of different whips at once, but I've been very monogamous apparently. And for this slipover, I'm going to go for the extra small size because it will already have, I think, 15 centimeters of ease for me, which probably will be enough. And I think because of my gauge, I'm actually more on the larger side. The final product would be a bit larger. So then if I went for S and I got an even larger piece, I would not like that. So yeah, excited to do this. It'll be fast. I'm happy to be using Knitting for Olive. The next combo that I want to do is their normal merino with the soft silk mohair, which I don't think I've got yarn for in stash. I have some merino, but that's for a camisole without any mohair. But I wanted to see how I tolerated that mohair on my hands. And actually the thing that I have to say about this merino, the heavy merino, people had said before, but it's really dry. I really feel like I need to moisturize basically afterwards if I work on it too long. And the mohair as well. So they both feel extremely dry, which is something I was not expecting, and it's not something that you experience a lot with knitting. But yeah, and this has been blocked and it still feels dry. So I don't know, maybe with wear it'll relax a bit. It's really drapey, don't get me wrong, but the next swatch I've got is with Filcolana Arwetta in Marzipan and Filcolana Tilia in Snow White. So these are the yarns. It's my first time using Tilia and I really like it. Snow White is like the most basic white and Marzipan is the most basic beige. Everyone has heard of them and has them. And this is going to be a balloon sweater by PetiteKnit. And this is my swatch. So it's a really nice beige. It's kind of... The beige, the marzipan is a mélange, which means that it's not a flat color. It's got some kind of not variation, but maybe flecks of darker or flecks of lighter fibers. And it's not just a color that is the same everywhere. And the mohair is just white everywhere. And the mohair is lighter than the fingering weight. So it does have a bit of variation, which makes it quite interesting. But it looks quite like a flat color here. It's 4mm needles. The balloon sweater is beautiful. It's got huge balloon sleeves. I think it's a drop shoulder as well, which is nice because PetiteKnit has quite a lot of maybe raglans, I guess, that are very popular. Although she does have some circular yokes and everything, so she does have a lot of patterns, so she covers a lot of bases. But this drop shoulder by PetiteKnit will be interesting. It's extremely drapey, it feels like a cloud. And I've seen some beautiful patterns or projects on Ravelry and Instagram, so I'm excited to do this. I've chosen to go with the colors that the pattern kind of suggests for simplicity's sake, because I don't like picking colors. But if I were to do this again, I probably would do maybe in a super light baby blue or duck egg blue. I don't think I suit light pink, but I feel like light colors would go with that very feminine shape of sweater. But I've seen some people also do it with dark brown, which could look pretty. So I'm excited to cast this on. I've had the yarn in stash since the same time that I bought the Knitting for Olive, so this is also from knit.co.uk. So just really trying to use my stash, and I'm being a good knitter because I'm using old stash instead of buying new yarn and then immediately using that yarn. So I did buy some new yarn, which I will talk about in just a second, but I want to use up old stash before using new stash. Otherwise the old stash will never get used. So now we can move on to the next section, which is acquisitions. And if this is not your cup of tea, then that's completely understandable. You can skip. I'm not trying to be overly consumeristic and capitalistic and talk about, look at me spending money. It's more about maybe making myself more accountable, where if I'm showing yarn here as an acquisition, I really aim to show it as a work in progress and as a finished object in future episodes, so that hopefully if viewers see some yarn here now today, you're going to see it come back, and it's not just going to be me accumulating yarn and never doing anything with it, because I'm really trying to stay away from that kind of habit. But the first things I'm going to talk about are books. So like I said, we moved across the country for new jobs, which meant that I had to leave my old job. And when I did that, they very kindly gave me a gift card from Amazon. And again, I don't really need anything from Amazon, so I didn't want to buy something for the sake of buying something. And Amazon is the absolute worst for anything knitting related. Please don't buy yarn from Amazon because it will be overpriced. Buy it from like Wool Warehouse or Lovecraft, or like those cheap websites will have the very basic yarns that Amazon tries to sell. And also Amazon is not really good at being transparent with like yarn weights and yardages, and people think they're gonna get this like huge chunky yarn and then they get like a mini skein of it and they're like, oh my god, no. And the information was like hidden somewhere. Talking from experience. So what they do have, however, are knitting books, and I have bought quite a few from those. I think this is where I bought the 52 Weeks of Socks book, for example. So this is where I bought my 2 new books with that gift. So the first one is the Vogue Knitting, The Ultimate Stitch Dictionary, which is like a big library of stitches. As you can see, like those are the swatches. And it's color-coded on the spine, as you can see, maybe in blue, orange, and green. And you've got your basic texture patterns made with knits and pearls. You've got lace, you've got cables, you've got color work. So they just kind of show you like the samples and then the directions. So I've had a bit of a look, and I think this is going to be a very interesting book to have. Maybe I could make some swatches for the fun of it with like scrap yarn, and then just make like a big swatch blanket or something. And just like feeling textures can be quite soothing, and it feels nice sometimes experiencing with different textures. And yeah, if I have some yarn I don't know what to do with, I think it would be a good way to play around. And then the second book I got is also from Vogue Knitting, and this one is The Ultimate Knitting Book. Over 1 million copies sold. And this book is about designing? Well, it's not about designing, but I've heard people say that it really helps them design. So we'll talk about sizing and techniques and grading. And I think this is going to be absolutely fascinating, because for a lot of the time when I was learning about knitting, what I was doing was following YouTube tutorials, which, you know, they just show you the mechanical action of doing something. But after a while, I realized that what I liked as well was knowing why a certain thing was done. So for example, twisting the stitches, people may have told you, oh, you're doing that and it's wrong, do it this way instead. But wouldn't it be interesting to know why it was wrong, or like what the consequences of this might be? So I think for some of the knitting nerds out there, this could be a very interesting book to answer all of these why questions. And it's the classic thing of when you're trying to learn something, if you realize that you can't explain it to someone in a simple way, that means that you quite don't understand it yourself. So this is going to be a good way of testing my understanding of things. So the other acquisitions, there's going to be 2 sets. The first one is a bag of yarn I ordered before Christmas, and I thought I was going to have I thought I was going to have it for the first podcast episode. But what I didn't realize was that the yarn actually arrived in my previous address that I've now since left a month ago. So I was so devastated, but thankfully a friend went by, picked up my parcel at that address, and she traveled to Edinburgh recently, where we met up, and I was able to take it off her hands, along with a lot of letters. Yeah, so I finally got that yarn. I was so excited, I was so giddy. So it's from SKD Yarn, and basically what I was looking for when I bought that yarn was that I had made a purchase from, I think from knit.co.uk, yeah, the same where I got like the dusty mousse, like knitting for Olive and everything. So I had gotten that yarn, and I had gotten even more yarn that was like for sweaters, like for example the caramel sweater. But the caramel sweater colors I wanted, knit.co.uk only had the burnt sugar mohair and not the Sunday fingering weight in camel. So I placed an order on SKD yarns to match with those half sweater quantities that I had gotten. So I really hope that makes sense. I had this big notebook where I said, okay, so you've got half a caramel sweater, what you need are 5 skeins of this color. So I bought the camel color at SKD, and now I have this completed set to make a caramel sweater by PetiteKnit. And I bought this. This is so weird because it shows brown on camera, but it shows green to the eye. This is so weird. And I've seen that on Ravelry, like when you look at the stashes that people have, no one's is showing green, neither are the finished projects, but it's so green in real life. And then this is the Sunday that I already had. So this is the color 3161 for both of them. And they look like a good match here, but they're not a good match at all. And I'm so stumped. I don't know if I should just go for it. I guess I'll swatch. I'll swatch and I'll see if the green somehow becomes brown like that. I feel like I'm going crazy, but like I promise this is green. This is to make a Friday slipover, not the V-neck, from PetiteKnit. It's a broken rib slipover. I love slipovers. So I'm going to be making that later. I think I have 3 of each of these kinds. And then the next thing I got was this alpaca from Scentless Garn in the color Greige, 2650. And I really love alpaca. Something that I want to try is the alpaca silk from Scentless Garn, but I haven't found a pattern to use it for. And this is going to be the Tourney slipover by the Knit Pearl Girl. I really like Sophie, her Instagram, her videos. I really wanted to support her and make one of her patterns. And I think a slipover would be a great way to dip my toes into that. I think she released that one quite early on, so it's one of her older patterns. And she uses alpaca from We Are Knitters, but I wanted to use a different alpaca, so I went for this, which I haven't tried yet, the alpaca from Scentless Garn, but I'm really excited because I love alpaca. So I think that will be really nice. And Greige is just like a safe color. I think it'll be nice to have something that's like a little different than just like the light beige. So it's like a darker beige. Because I have slipovers that are like very pale, and I have slipovers that are going to be very dark. So it's going to be good to have a medium colored slipover. And then very lastly, the last thing I did was when I went to Edinburgh yesterday, I of course had to pop in my local yarn shop, which is Be Inspired Fibers, like I mentioned. And I'll show you some videos and photos that I took there because it's so great. Rebecca from the Creabea did a knitting shop tour, and she showcased that shop in a bit more detail, so you can see her videos for more info. The shop owner is lovely, super helpful. Her stock is amazing. She's got the best yarns that you can ever wish for. She's got a lot of Isager, Scentless Garn, Camarosa, any yarn weight that you need, any indie dyers from the area. There's like Nervous Fiber, Dystopic Fiber, Zakami, Ushita. But long story short, I went in there with some Flora that I had gotten for the April cardigan by PetiteKnit. I had originally bought this beige Flora with some beige mohair, Drops Kid Silk, but I realized that I don't like Drops Kid Silk and I cannot wear it. And I thought, should I just make the cardigan anyway and then not wear it? And I was like, well, listen to yourself. No, that of course isn't the right thing to do. You're supposed to knit things to wear them, like personally. It's okay if you don't. So I thought, okay, fine, we'll see what we do with the drops. So let's go buy another mohair that would be a match for this color, and maybe let's try and get some Isager. But then I arrived there and I thought, actually, Tilia works quite well. Now we've discovered we like Tilia. And I thought I was going to get the color Latte, because it's a really safe color, like beige. It's quite light, so I think he would have maybe toned this a little bit like down and made it lighter. But actually the shop had Tilia in the color Chai, which is 364, and it's that color. And the silk thread in this is golden. Can you see that? I think it's amazing. So it's not quite a match in terms of the colors. This is more warm and this is more cold. But I think this is what's going to make it interesting. I'm excited to swatch. And honestly, it's fine. Like, I don't need to love this. Flora was extremely cheap. Tilia is on like the medium the medium range of cheap and expensive mohairs. I bought 4 of these and I have 4 of those. I don't know if I'm going to make the extra small or small. I'm leaning towards extra small because the April cardigan seems to be more fitted than, for example, the champagne cardigan. And I think I made my champagne cardigan in the size small, and it's huge. So I would like to have a very strikingly different cardigan, and I'm going to make it cropped, and it's going to be nice over dresses, hopefully, for spring. I think it would be the cutest thing ever to have a fitted, cropped cardigan. So I think, having said that with you, I want to make the extra small, I've decided. So I will swatch, and I will cast this on. It's a beautiful cardigan that I've had in my library for ages that I just need to cast on. And now I finally made my decision, which is to not use Drop Skid Silk and to use this instead. And I feel good about that. And then the next thing I got at the Inspired Fibers is a sweater quantity of Isager Eco Soft. And this is a color 4S. And this is made of 56% alpaca and 44 cotton. It's extremely lightweight. It's just 50 grams for the balls. And they're so plump, as you can see. And that color is gorgeous. It's kind of a brown, I guess, but also kind of a gray. Is there a name for that? Like, not grayish. Brown? I think it's a great color. I think they've got like 6 or 7 different colors. A couple of dark ones, a couple of light ones. And this is to make the Eclair pullover. I don't know by whom, but I'll put it on the screen. And it's a very light sweater, kind of like, I think it's got a split hem, which I don't think I've worn a sweater with that before, so it'll be nice. And yeah, you just hold that strand alone, no need for mohair. It's really soft, it's kind of fuzzy as well. It may be a blown yarn, I think. Yeah, it's a blow yarn, which I haven't stashed but not worked with before, and I think I'm really, really wanting to cast this jumper on. But I think maybe that would be a spring jumper because it is also a bit cropped. So it's not too urgent, but I was happy that they had enough in stock. The shop owner very kindly opened a whole new pack to give me like a matching dye lot set, just to make sure that the sweater was going to be matchy. So yeah, so happy with this. And then lastly, the last purchase there is something that I actually have talked about in my 10 sweaters to make video. In that video, I've talked about 10 sweaters, a bit more actually, that I'm planning to make or intend to make. Ideally this year, maybe it'll take more time. And what I really want to do is like I said, you know, to be accountable. And I'm not just saying that, like those patterns out loud, and then doing 20 different ones. So this is a pattern from that video, because I was serious about it. It's the Office Sweater by Knit Flitter, and I'm going to use Alpaca 1 and Alpaca 2. And I was saying in the video that I was struggling because I wanted to make it in the color Rust 33, but every time I was in an online shop, they would either have enough of stock or they would have that color, but not the other one of like Alpaca 1 or Alpaca 2. So I could never buy the whole sweater quantity from one shop. They didn't want to have it to do it over 2 different transactions. But I thought, like, maybe that's what I'm going to have to end up doing. But then, here we go to Be Inspired Fibers, and they had both. So there it is. That's so pretty. It's looking quite orangey here, but in real life, it honestly looks even a bit more brown. Like, that one looks more brown. I think that one is a bit darker. So the alpaca one is kind of supposed to act as, like, the second strand, like mohair would be, and alpaca 2 is the fingering weight. This is inspired by Caroline from Caroline's Knits. She made hers in alpaca 1 and 2. She made hers in dark grey, which looked stunning, but I thought this could be a nice way to add a bit of color because I've basically already made a dark grey sweater. Like, this looks exactly like that. The sweater is a raglan with a saddle shoulder, and it's quite fitted as well. So I thought it would look too similar to this, and that color is just so nice. And Isager has a lot of different colorways for alpaca. They've got this nice olive green, which I'm keeping an eye on. which I'm keeping an eye on because it looks really, really nice and not too in your face. But yeah, love alpaca, love Isager, love the pattern. This is going to be a really fun ride. And that's what I'm talking about before when I'm saying that I'm happy to cast on a project with yarn I already had in stash, like the weekend slipover and the balloon sweater. Because if I was just listening to my desires, I would cast on with this, and I would cast on with that. The yarn I bought literally yesterday. And if I keep doing that, then I'm never gonna work through my stash. And I was gonna maybe do a bit of knitted chat today, but then I'm realizing that it's already been over an hour, which I've not even filmed so long like this before. And it's been 20 minutes of acquisitions already, so let me know, like I said in the comments, if you'd like more, like longer videos, then I'm happy to do that because I can still speak for hours. Or if you'd like to keep it short and sweet, but then have more videos, then that's completely fine. And then let me know if you'd like some knitted chat, or if you'd like some personal chat. Basically, you know, I'm starting out these videos. They can be anything we want them to be, so if you have any suggestions or feedback about things that you like about my videos, things that you don't like about my videos, I want to again reiterate my absolute gratitude for the reception my videos have had. You guys have left so many comments and likes, and like the statistics on YouTube tell me that you've been watching like a lot of the videos and not just like the first 5 minutes. So it makes me really happy that you're finding this interesting or enjoyable. And some people have said that some of the sweaters I've talked about, they've then added to their list. That makes me so happy because I was always like that, and I was always adding things to my list because of other people, and it's nice to be on the other side of it for once. And actually, the channel has grown faster than I thought it would, which it's so nice and a bit overwhelming. And I thought maybe if I reached 1,000 subscribers, I would maybe do a giveaway? Or is there something else that could mark the occasion? I think a giveaway is pretty standard. So I thought what I could maybe do is go to a yarn shop, get some yarn, and then show it on video and say, you know, like, here's the giveaway. Or I could do the other way where I do the giveaway, and then once I select the winner, I ask them what kind of yarn they would want, then I'd go and buy that for them. It probably would be like one skein of hand-dyed yarn. I think that could be quite special, especially if it's something from Edinburgh, because then it would be, you know, like this local thing. I could only ship it in the UK, I think, but hopefully lots of my viewers are from the UK. So let me know if a giveaway is something that you'd like, or whether we should wait for a bigger milestone or something else in the giveaway. Just let me know. But as always, it's been such a pleasure talking through everything. I feel like my cheeks are hurting from like smiling. I've just been so excited to see my projects and my swatches on camera. I think you almost get like a second breath of like, oh, that looks really good. But it's such a mess right now next to me, so I'm gonna go and tidy everything up. And I feel good about talking some of those things through, because then I feel like I am clearer on my plans or what I want. But let me know if you've made any progress on what you were working on, and let me know if you've added anything that I've talked about on your list, because like I said, it brings me lots of joy. I hope that you have a good rest of your day and that you'll stick around for a future episode, hopefully soon. And yeah, I'll see you next time. Bye everyone!